Okay, so I think NieR Automata is a really great game. It has fun as hell gameplay, an incredible soundtrack, and an extremely unique and interesting story that's really worth experiencing. But as much as I like that game, it's the one that came before it that I absolutely love. The NieR franchise is a weird one. In 2003, the game Drakengard was released, except in Japan where it was called Dragon Dragoon, which is a really weird title. But I guess a weird title also fits because it was an extremely weird game. A really dark and messed up RPG action game for the PS2 that I'm like genuinely scared of. Just listen to this OST, you can't tell me this game isn't evil. I really don't know a whole lot about the game, but what I do know is that it was the directorial debut of Yoko Taro, the incredibly talented mad genius who later went on to make the NieR franchise. The stories he makes feel totally different from any others, but they're really interesting too. He's quite the strange person himself, but he's also really cool for making such unique pieces of media, and I'm a big fan of him. But it's not as simple as him just making both series, because through its multiple endings, one of the 5 ways Drakengard can end leads directly into the first NieR. But it's not just like NieR is the sequel to Drakengard either. It takes place in a different world than 98% of that game, it has none of the characters, and Drakengard even got its own unrelated sequels. So it's weird. These games are all pretty loosely connected, even NieR Replicant and Automata are set like hundreds of years apart, but the connections are still interesting and there are ties between them. NieR's story wouldn't exist without Drakengard's conclusion, so let's talk about it. In Drakengard, the main character is Kaim. On the surface, he looks like a regular fantasy hero boy, but he's kind of an actual psychopath. He shows no mercy and just actually loves killing people. Like, he really likes killing people. He even kills kids at a point in the game, which is crazy. Like, look at this guy's face. That is not the smile of a stable member of society. That's actually terrifying. Kaim is a silent protagonist, but unlike most others, he actually has a reason. In this universe, a pact is sort of like a contract that can be made between a human and a supernatural creature, like a dragon or something. The pact links the two souls of the beings, so if one dies, then the other one dies, but you also get magical powers from it, which can be cool. The human has to give something up as part of the pact though, and Kaim lost his voice, which is a pretty cool way of making a silent protagonist make sense in universe, since most games never even give us a reason. Kaim's pact partner is a dragon called Angelus, who's also in love with him, I think, I don't know. The game is kinda like a Warriors game, running around repetitively killing hundreds of enemies, but you can also fly Angelus around sometimes, which is pretty cool. From what I hear, the gameplay isn't great, but I can't really speak on it because I've never played the game. I think most people are really just playing to experience the unique atmosphere and story anyway, so obviously nice gameplay would be better, but it's not the main selling point. The world of Drakengard absolutely sucks though. It's extremely dark and horrible. This game is like actually crazy. One of the main characters is a pedophile, another one literally eats babies. What the hell even is this game? But anyway, to unlock Ending E, the player has to collect all 63 of the game's weapons, which I hear is a really tedious process, but once you finally do, this terrifying evil entity called the Queen Beast that looks like a statue of a lady somehow gets sent to our dimension, like modern day Earth. I'm not familiar enough with the game to understand why this happened. I don't know if there is an actual explanation somewhere, if it's just something that happens. But if you want a proper analysis, recap type video of Drakengard, you should really just watch Clemp's video, it's really good. But yeah, after the creature falls into Tokyo, it just kind of stands there, and this extremely ominous bell noise starts ringing out. Kaim and Angelus followed the creature to destroy it and seem pretty stumped on what to do. And then begins the final boss of the game, where instead of using the gameplay the whole rest of the game was built upon, you have to press 2 buttons to destroy rings in time with these chime noises. Basically a rhythm game, but it gets crazy hard. There's something really kind of scary about this scene, but I can't even explain or rationalize why. It just kind of freaks me out for some reason. I think it's because of the sounds and the way it just kind of stands there. I don't know, ignore me. But once the creature is finally defeated, it disintegrates into white dust, while Kaim and his dragon Angelus are shot down by the military and die. From the dragon, humanity gains magic, which is pretty cool, but from the Queen Beast, the white particles cause a terrible disease called white chlorination syndrome, and it really messes up the world, which is not quite as cool. This is where NieR actually starts. The world really was just like ours until one day in 2003, this entity that we had no understanding of just appeared, died, and then messed up the entire world. It's a pretty scary but also interesting concept. In Tokyo, after all that went down, a young boy called NieR uses a magic book to protect his sister Yona from these monsters called Shades. She gets sick, and then we cut to 1,000 years later, which is a great hook for the game. I assume Drakengard sequels take place after this game's other endings, so are even less linked, but it's still interesting to me that the connection between the series even exists, and that NieR even got to be made. Like, Yoko Taro was really like, hey guys, I want to make a sequel to the secret ending to my extremely obscure PS2 game. Is that cool with you guys? And someone actually said yes and gave him the money and time to do it. It's honestly crazy, but I am very glad it happened. so Drakengard's ending E leads into the game NieR. Okay, makes sense. But it's not even that simple either, because if you look up the first NieR, you might get some confusing results. Some of the pictures seem to have different main characters. Well, that's because the original NieR had two separate versions. Kinda like a Pokemon game, except instead of picking between cool legendaries, we have NieR Young Boy version and NieR Middle-Aged Man version. For some reason, the developers thought it would appeal more to Western gamers to play as an older man, so they literally just changed the protagonists of the game. Is that a thing people can do? I can't think of like any other games that did something like this. I think it's a really strange thing that happened. But apart from the obvious change, they're pretty much the same game, so you don't miss out either way. NieR Gestalt, the man version, was released on Xbox 360 in Japan, but it was the only version released in English. And it was also probably only played in English, because literally no one in Japan owns an Xbox. NieR Replicant was the original intended version, with the young boy main character. It was on PS3 and never translated into English, but it's also the version that got remade, so it pretty much did. That remake is the best version of the game, but it also has the really stupid title of NieR Replicant the 112472628828, which is just such an awful title. Like, is this a video game or someone's credit card number? I still have no idea what the significance of this title even is. I genuinely think Yoko Taro just added it to confuse people. I think this is the best version for a few reasons. It improved the gameplay a whole lot, which is awesome, since it was kind of the one thing holding back the original. It has enhanced graphics, which I think look way better, and it has some great new content, including a new ending and story chapter. It's also, like I said, the only way to play as Brother NieR in English, which was the original intended experience. A lot of people wish the Gestalt version of the game would get remade as well, but personally, I don't really mind. They're basically the same game anyway, and I prefer the young NieR. I think it fits better with the story. But yeah, after all that yapping, time to finally get into the actual point of the video. Today I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why you should experience one of the best stories in video games. The beautiful and heartbreaking work of art that is NieR Replicant. I usually start these videos by talking about how I got into what I'm recommending, but my first experience with the NieR series was actually Automata. Around lockdown I heard about the game and I thought it looked really awesome. The sweeping orchestral soundtrack, Platinum Games action, and complex existential Evangelion-esque story, it all just seemed like something I would really like. But when I actually got the game, I just couldn't get into it at all, and I dropped it after a few hours. And I'm honestly not even sure why, since when I went back to the game a few years later, I absolutely fell in love with it. Since I didn't like it the first time around though, I have no idea why I decided to get Replicant's remake with some money I'd saved a bit after it came out. But I'm definitely glad I did, because it's one of my favorite stories and probably my favorite in the medium of video games. And unraveling it and just existing in the world was an incredible experience, and I ended up playing the game for 53 hours in 20 days, which yeah, is kind of a lot, but trust me, the game is just that good and I just had to see what happened next. One of the things I think immediately jumps out as to why this game and the series is so special is the music. Like, it even played at the Olympics one time, it's that incredible. It adds so much to the atmosphere and improves every aspect of the game for me. There's these emotional, incredibly strong tracks that just really make you feel like NieR Replicant version 1212340111010. There's some actual masterpiece songs in here, and there's a reason so many people consider NieR to be one of the best series in terms of OST. And with only 2 games, that's extremely impressive. There's multiple tracks that I listen to pretty often, like Hills of Radiant Winds. It plays while traversing the big field, and it's basically this game's Hyrule Field theme. I spent a few hours of my playthrough literally just running around and listening to this song, cause yeah, I just really liked hearing it. If you take a listen to the vocals of the song and you're a super mega language expert, you might be able to tell that it's not a real language. The singer for this game, Emmy Evans, literally just made up a language called Chaos Language, entirely for this game's soundtrack, and I think that's really interesting and cool. The Song of the Ancients is another great one that I love. Shadow Lord is a great one, and one of the characters' themes, which is subtitled Sacrifice, is actually like one of the saddest songs I've ever heard. I'm gonna cry. There's a bunch more as well, but to be honest, I don't really listen to a whole lot of the songs outside of the game. They're just not really the type I'd listen to, but while you're in the experience, I think they enhance it a huge amount. And they really show the power that a soundtrack can have on a piece of media. And if I do occasionally listen to the songs, I just get so many memories of how much of a unique and incredible experience the game was. And that's just cool. The next thing I want to talk about is the gameplay, which I had a lot of fun with. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest changes with the remake is the reworking of the combat. Since I haven't played the original, I can't speak much on it, but even just looking at a comparison video, you can see it's pretty different. there was no lock-on, you couldn't run, and other stuff too probably. The original combat wasn't awful from what I've heard, but it's pretty clunky and not great. The remake's combat in my opinion was fun, but some people online don't seem to agree with me. But this is more of a Zelda-style action-adventure type game anyway, not Devil May Cry 5. It doesn't need all the depth in the world. As long as it stays fun for the whole game, then that's good enough for me. It's punchy, weighty, there's a bunch of types of weapons, the impacts are satisfying, and the magic spells are a lot of fun too. I think people are just harsh on Replicant's combat because Automatas is so good. Like, that game's combat is genuinely on another level, and it's extremely fun. But that was a Platinum game. Those guys are just legendary, and we can't expect that level of quality from most of the studios. Apart from the base combat, you spend most of your time running around, interacting with characters, fighting with bosses, going through dungeons, doing side quests, and even fishing. I didn't have a problem with the fishing at all. All you do is basically just hold the stick in the direction NieR is leaning. But for one reviewer back in 2010, that was too hard, and he failed to complete the game and was unable to review it. I don't know if the fishing was just harder in the PS3 version, but for real, game journalists are just absurdly bad at games sometimes. Like, I'm not good at games either, but I basic tasks like Cuphead's tutorial. As for the side quests of the game, I didn't really do many of them, so I can't really say if they're good or not. I just never really been that much of a side quest person at all. Even in games I love like the Yakuza series, which I'm surprised I've barely talked about before, just never bothered with them, even though I hear they're really great in Yakuza. More stuff in a game I really like sounds epic, but when you actually do them in most games, they're usually pretty boring. They're just like, hey, get this item for generic character number 5, and stuff like that. It just doesn't interest me at all. Anyway, there's also quite a bit of variety in here, because the gameplay also changes in different areas. There's a fixed camera angle, Resident Evil-esque spooky mansion, a text adventure section, and at some point the game switches to an isometric view. It really keeps the game varied and interesting, and it's cool. NieR really does remind me of a Zelda game, and I'm sure the inspiration was real, because there's even a reference. I really like Zelda a lot. Twilight Princess is one of my favourite games ever, Wind Waker was a big childhood favourite, and I also love Breath of the Wild. I just need to actually finish it one day. It's been 9 years now, oh my god, how? But to me, NieR really does feel like kind of a more mature story in that Zelda style, and less like a traditional RPG like Final Fantasy or something. I'll talk more about Zelda in the next video unless I don't, but for now let's briefly talk about NieR's story. The story is definitely my favourite thing about the game, and it's one that really uses the medium of video games to its advantage. The story would really not work as well as a book or anime, and that's a recurring thing with Yoko Taro's works. I want you to experience NieR yourself, so I'm not going to go into any details or spoilers, because that would make your experience less good. But I will warn you though, that this game is really sad, so just like be wary of that before jumping in. Like with most of Yoko Taro's games, to fully understand and see the game's entire story, you have to do multiple playthroughs. But stuff is different every time, and the content you get from doing it is 100% worth it in my opinion. I'm not the biggest game replayer normally, but with NieR it didn't bother me much, and if the game was just the original Route A, I'd still like it, but not nearly as much as I do now. So I really suggest you do the other routes. In the story, our boy NieR lives in a pretty normal seeming medieval fantasy village. His little sister Yona is sick, having a condition called the Black Scroll. It's very common and it causes strange black letters to appear on a person's skin. It's incurable and causes a lot of pain and eventually death, so it really sucks. Their mom also died of the same condition before, so NieR is left to do whatever he can to earn the money he needs to support himself and his sister. Eventually some stuff happens, he finds a magic talking book called Vice, he becomes close with two outcasts forming a nice found family, and they go on an adventure to stop some guy called the Shadow Lord and save the world. I know it sounds kind of generic just explaining it like that, but honestly, Yoko Taro's stories are really like no others, and I'm sure when you play the game, you'll see the huge amount of depth the story has, and the extremely interesting and unique things it does. This game also has some excellent voice acting as well. There's a lot of awesome people in the cast like Ray Chase, Liam O'Brien, Yuri Lowenthal, DC Douglas, Spike Spencer, Kirk Thornton, and Laura Bailey, who delivers such a standout performance as my favourite character Kaine. The other voices that I hadn't heard of are also great, and I'd like to see what other performances they do in the future. Zach Aguilar, who plays NieR, is pretty good. You might also know him as Genos from One Punch Man, David from Cyberpunk Edgerunners, or Tanjiro from popular anime I've never seen. But I think he did a really good performance here. Fiona's voice also happens to be Heather Hoban, who voiced Shiki in Twowie. A few of the lines of dialogue aren't the most natural sounding, but the performances themselves are excellent, and the story is still my favourite thing about this game. It's just something you have to experience if you're a fan of good stories. It's just actually great. But one of the main things that makes the story so special is the characters. I love the main trio of Emil, Kaine, and NieR, and they're extremely likeable. I love them. Emil is a young boy whose eyes have the power to turn people to stone. That's kind of scary, but he actually doesn't use his power, which is what the blindfold's for. He's actually very nice, and yeah. Kaine is an angry swearing lady who's my favorite, and NieR is a nice hero boy. I like him, he's cool. There's also Grandma Vice. He's a talking book and also a good character. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not doing a good job of explaining the characters here, but you can just see them in the game. I really think they're great characters, and they have very entertaining personalities and dynamics and relationships with each other. One of my favorite JRPG parties, definitely. The NieR franchise as a whole is actually pretty big. Even though there's only 2 main games, it actually has a lot of stuff. There's manga, multiple novels, a gacha game which apparently has some interesting lore, a Final Fantasy XIV crossover, and even multiple stage plays, so there's a lot to get into if you're interested. If you do end up liking NieR Replicant, I would also recommend getting the Grimoire NieR book. It's got a bunch of concept art and short stories and all sorts of stuff, it's just awesome. And obviously Automata as well is really worth playing. I might give that its own video one day. I'd love for Yoko Taro to make a 3rd main NieR game at some point, because that would just be really cool and interesting to see. But even if that doesn't happen, I'm just excited to see what he comes up with next. Since this is one of my favourite games, and there's so much more I could talk about with the story and stuff, I really do want to make a big deep dive video one day in the future. But I feel like I need to get better at video making first, so subscribe if you want to see that and whatever other videos I make. If you do check out the game, I hope you like it, and thanks for watching, bye!